Barron Trump's shocking $100 million lawsuit against a liberal TV host takes a dramatic turn when he receives a chilling late-night call. Drop the case or you'll regret it. With powerful enemies closing in, a media war spiraling out of control, and a secret letter that changes everything. Will Barron fight back or fold under pressure? Before we continue this incredible story, let us know where you're watching from. If you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to the channel because tomorrow we have another inspiring story you won't want to miss. The bright studio lights illuminated the set of the Whitmore Report, one of the most watched programs on the liberal news network, LNN. The host, Jason Whitmore, a man notorious for his smug demeanor and sharp tongue, sat back in his chair with a glint of mischief in his eyes. His guest panel, a collection of like-minded media personalities, leaned in, ready for their next soundbite. "Melania Trump?" Whitmore sneered, his voice thick with mockery. "Now, there's a woman who has mastered the art of looking concerned when it suits her." The audience erupted in laughter. A few people clapped, others whistled, feeding into Whitmore's smug satisfaction. The cameras zoomed in, capturing the smirks of his panelists. It was a rehearsed moment, one Whitmore knew would go viral. Another dig at the former First Lady, another attempt to reduce her to nothing more than a punchline. But not everyone was laughing. Miles away, in the secure comfort of the White House residence, Barron Trump sat frozen in his chair, his grip tightening around the armrests. The television screen flickered before him, broadcasting Whitmore's smug grin. The carefully orchestrated insult, the waves of laughter that followed. He had grown up with this, watching the media rip his family apart, turning them into caricatures for ratings and cheap applause. But something about this felt different. Maybe it was the tone. Maybe it was the sheer arrogance in Whitmore's voice. Or maybe it was the look in his mother's eyes that flashed through Barron's mind. The quiet strength behind her smiles. The way she shielded him from the viciousness of the world. The night she spent comforting him when headlines turned personal. Enough. He exhaled sharply, his heart pounding. This wasn't about politics. This wasn't about some late-night joke. This was an attack on his mother, on her character, her dignity, her humanity. And this time, someone was going to answer for it. A Secret Service agent standing nearby noticed the shift in Barron's demeanor. "Sir, is everything all right?" Barron didn't take his eyes off the screen. His jaw tightened, his pulse steadying. Then, without hesitation, he turned to the agent. "Get my lawyer on the phone." The agent hesitated. "A lawyer?" "Yes." The journey's voice was calm, unwavering. $100 million. The room fell into a tense silence. The agent, trained to respond to threats, not lawsuits, simply nodded and stepped aside. Within minutes, calls were being made, and Barron Trump's unexpected declaration of war began to take shape. The media had spent years attacking his mother. Now, it was time to fight back. By the next morning, headlines exploded across every major news outlet. Break-in, Barron Trump files $100 million, lawsuit against. LNN's Jason Whitmore, Trump's son, takes on the media. Is this a new war on free speech? Melania, humiliated or avenged? Public reaction to Whitmore lawsuits. The news spread like wildfire, igniting a national debate. Social media became a battleground. Some applauded Barron, calling him a devoted son defending his mother. Others mocked him, painting him as a privileged rich kid throwing a tantrum. The hashtags Stand with Barron and Trump Tantrum trended simultaneously, reflecting a country divided. Inside the White House, Melania Trump sat in her private quarters, watching the headlines unfold. She had spent years enduring public scrutiny, always choosing grace over retaliation. But this was something different. The door creaked open and Barron stepped inside. She turned to him, her face unreadable. "Sweetheart, you didn't have to do this for me." Barron met her gaze, his expression calm but firm. "Yes, I did." A long pause. Then slowly she placed a hand on his cheek, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. You are so much like your father." The word settled deep in Barron's chest, heavier than he expected. And across the city, in a luxury New York penthouse, Jason Whitmore leaned back in his leather chair, scrolling through the news on his phone. He chuckled. A lawsuit from the kid? Oh, this will be fun. His producers smirked. Think we should respond? Whitmore took a sip of his scotch, a slow grin spreading across his face. Not yet, he said. Let's see how much this little Trump can handle first. But what he didn't know, what he couldn't see coming, was that he had just awakened a storm unlike any other. And Barron Trump was just getting started. The moment the lawsuit went public, the media world erupted. Every news channel, every online outlet, every late-night show had only one topic: Barron Trump's $100 million lawsuit against Jason Whitmore. Some commentators called him courageous, finally standing up to the relentless bullying of his mother. Others mocked him, painting him as an entitled rich kid trying to silence free speech. But regardless of which side people took, one thing was clear. This wasn't just another celebrity spat. This was a war, and everyone wanted to see how it played out. Within 24 hours, talk shows had assembled their expert panels, each guest taking sides. "I respect Barron for defending his mother," said a conservative analyst on Patriot News Tonight. "For years, the media has treated Melania Trump like she's fair game, mocking her at every turn. Finally, someone is fighting back." "Oh, please," sneered a progressive commentator on the evening debate. "Whitmore made a joke. It's called satire. If Barron Trump can't handle that, maybe he should stay out of the public eye." Meanwhile, on social media, the battle raged just as fiercely. Stand with Barron trended alongside Trump tantrum. Celebrities weighed in, some backing Barron, others ridiculing him. One tweet in particular stood out. Jason Whitmore, @WhitmoreLive. A Trump suing for defamation? The irony is delicious. Can't wait to see this case crumble. See you in court, kid. Barron saw the tweet, his jaw tightening. He had expected mockery, resistance, even personal attacks. But this wasn't just arrogance. It was a challenge. And he was ready to meet it. That night, as Barron sat in his White House suite, his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He hesitated before answering. Barron Trump. The voice on the other end was deep, gravelly, unmistakable. "Barron, this is Clint Eastwood." Barron sat up straight. "Mr. Eastwood?" "I saw what happened," Eastwood said, "and I respect what you're doing, but you need to be careful, son. These people don't play fair." Barron exhaled, gripping the phone tighter. "I figured as much." "No, you don't," Eastwood countered, his voice sharp. "They won't just fight you in court. They'll destroy you before you even step into that courtroom. They'll dig into your past, twist every move you've made, manufacture scandals if they have to. This isn't just a lawsuit. It's a war of perception." Barron felt a cold chill creep down his spine. "What do you suggest I do?" A pause. Then Eastwood chuckled. "Don't let them break you. And don't fight like a spoiled kid. Fight like a man. Use the truth. Stay sharp, stay strong, and most of all, don't let them see you flinch." Barron swallowed hard, his pulse steadying. "I'm not backing down." "Good," Eastwood said. "Then prepare for war." The line went dead. The very next morning, a major news network aired a special report. Exclusive. Barron Trump's secret scandal. What is he hiding? Barron's heart pounded as he watched the segment unfold. The anchor spoke in grave tones, introducing a montage of baseless allegations, claims that Barron had used government resources for personal gain, that he had been involved in unethical business dealings, that he was nothing more than a privileged, out-of-touch figure writing on his father's name. Then came the worst part: doctored photos. Images that had clearly been manipulated to make it look like Barron was partying recklessly, wasting taxpayer dollars, and acting like an irresponsible elite. Lies, all lies. Melania, sitting beside him, gasped, her hand covering her mouth. "They're trying to destroy you," she whispered. Barron clenched his fists. I knew they'd fight back, but this is disgusting. Meanwhile, in a dimly lit newsroom across the country, Jason Whitmore laughed with his producers. This is how we win, he smirked. We make him look like a spoiled brat, and the lawsuit falls apart before it even reaches court. His producer grinned. The public eats this stuff up. Whitmore leaned back in his chair, satisfied. By the time we're done with Barron Trump, he won't just drop this lawsuit. He'll wish he never started it. That night, as Barron sat in his room, his phone rang again. It was Clint Eastwood. I told you they'd come for you. Barron sighed, rubbing his temples. I just didn't think they'd sink this low. That's because you underestimated them. Never do that again. Barron closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them, his resolve stronger than ever. What do I do now? Eastwood's voice was steady. You fight back, not with anger, with truth. Barron exhaled slowly. The smear campaign had begun, the attacks were coming from every angle, but he wasn't backing down. If Whitmore wanted a war, he was about to get one. The smear campaign against Barron Trump was in full force. Every morning new headlines painted him as a spoiled, entitled, thin-skinned rich kid. News panels debated whether he was weaponizing the courts to silence free speech. Late-night comedians mocked him relentlessly. Every social media platform was flooded with outrage, mockery, and conspiracy theories. But Barron wasn't breaking. He knew this was just phase one of their attack strategy. Discredit him, isolate him, and make him a joke before the real legal battle even begins. And then, on a cold Monday morning, everything changed. As Barron sat in the White House library, scrolling through endless articles smearing his name, his phone buzzed. An email. Subject, you need to see this. Attached was a scanned letter with no sender name, no return address, and no explanation. But the moment Barron opened the file, his breath caught in his throat. It was an internal email from Jason Whitmore to his producers, sent the night before his infamous attack on Melania Trump. From Jason Whitmore. To Whitmore Live Production Team. Subject, tonight's show, Melania Angle. Hit Melania hard, make her look cold, distant, like she doesn't care. The audience eats that up. Push the Ice Queen narrative, turn her into a villain, and Barron will react. We'll use that reaction against him. Barron's hands trembled as he read the words. Whitmore's attack on Melania hadn't been an off-the-cuff remark. It wasn't just a tasteless joke. It was a deliberate, calculated assault meant to provoke a response from Barron. And now, there was proof. Dad! Barron's voice echoed through the hallways. Within seconds, Donald Trump entered the room, followed by a team of advisors. Barron wordlessly handed him the phone. Donald read the email, his expression darkening with every line. They planned this, Dad. They baited me. They wanted this lawsuit. The former president exhaled slowly, then turned to one of his closest legal advisors. Get my lawyers. Now. Within an hour, the Trump legal team gathered in the West Wing, surrounding a long oak table. The leaked Whitmore email was printed and spread before them like a smoking gun. A senior attorney adjusted his glasses. This is it. This is what we needed. Proof of intent. It's not just slander anymore. It's defamation. We can prove they acted with malice. Melania, who had remained quiet throughout the meeting, finally spoke. Her voice was calm, but there was a cold fire in her eyes. They didn't just attack me, they tried to manipulate my son. Barron looked at her, his fists tightening. And now, we use it against them. Donald Trump nodded, a knowing smirk forming. Then let's go all in. Before Trump's legal team could even file the new evidence, something unexpected happened. That night, as Barron sat alone in his room, his phone buzzed again. A news alert. Breaking. Leaked emails exposed Jason Whitmore's attack on Melania Trump. Barron's eyes widened. He clicked the link. Every major news network was now reporting on the leaked Whitmore email. Somehow, someone had exposed it before they could even use it in court. Conservative outlets were furious. This is what we've been saying for years. The media manipulates public opinion, attacks conservatives, and uses lies to push their agenda. Barron Trump was right to sue. Whitmore's a fraud. And now we have proof. Liberal media? Scrambling. This doesn't look great for Jason Whitmore. The email suggests the attack on Melania Trump was premeditated. Could Whitmore's career survive this controversy? Meanwhile, late-night comedians who had spent the past week mocking Barron were suddenly silent. The mood had shifted. The lawsuit was no longer just a rich kid throwing a tantrum. It was about exposing the media's corruption and agenda. And Jason Whitmore knew it. Inside Whitmore's penthouse studio in New York, the usually cocky host sat frozen, staring at his phone screen as his team paced the room. "Who the hell leaked that email?" Whitmore roared, slamming his fist onto his desk. His head producer swallowed. "We don't know. It wasn't from our team. Someone on the outside must have had access." Whitmore's face was pale, his usual arrogance replaced with pure fear. "They're winning." A long silence filled the room. Then Whitmore stood up, straightened his tie, and muttered, "Then we hit back. Hard." The next morning, Whitmore launched his counterattack. A well-known journalist, appearing on primetime television, introduced a surprise guest, a former close friend of Melania Trump. Dabbing at fake tears, she looked into the camera. "Melania isn't who she seems." The journalist leaned in. "What do you mean?" "She's distant. She doesn't really care about people. She plays the role of a perfect wife, but behind closed doors, she's cold. It's all an act." Barron stared at the screen, his stomach turning. The smear campaign had escalated. They weren't just attacking his lawsuit now. They were painting his mother as a heartless, manipulative woman, trying to justify Whitmore's original insult. Melania silently turned off the TV, exhaling. "They're trying to make me look like I deserved it." Barron's fists tightened. "Mom, this is disgusting." Melania offered a sad smile. "I'm used to it." Barron shook his head. "Well, I'm not." The attacks on Melania were working. Talk shows debated. Did Barron overreact? Was Melania really the victim? Was Whitmore's comment just calling out the truth about her? The pressure was mounting. Then, a phone call came that changed everything. A lawyer's voice, urgent. "Barron, the judge has decided. The case is moving forward." Barron exhaled sharply. He knew what that meant. Whitmore wasn't done fighting, but neither was he. The White House was no stranger to crisis, but tonight the tension in the air was different. Barron Trump's lawsuit against Jason Whitmore had escalated beyond a mere courtroom battle. It had turned into all-out war. The latest smear campaign against Melania had taken its toll. Talk shows and social media were flooded with debates, speculation, and half-truths, questioning her character and painting her as a cold, distant figure. Whitmore's allies in the media had shifted tactics. Instead of defending him, they were now working to make Melania the villain in the story. The goal was clear. If the public believed Melania deserved the attack, Barron's case would collapse before it even reached trial. Barron refused to let that happen. That night, he sat in the dim glow of his room, the blue light of his laptop illuminating his determined expression. He scrolled through the latest headlines. Melania Trump, Ice Queen or media victim? Did Barron overreact? A deeper look into the Trump family's legal feud. The lawsuit that could cost Whitmore his career. But should it? His jaw clenched. Every article, every debate, every comment was designed to twist the truth. He knew his mother. He knew who she was, and he wouldn't let them rewrite her story. Just as he was about to shut his laptop, his phone vibrated on the desk. A blocked number. He hesitated, then answered. Barron Trump. A pause. Then a low, distorted voice. "Drop the lawsuit or you'll regret it." Barron froze. His grip on the phone tightened. "Who is this?" The voice didn't answer. Instead, there was a brief crackle of static, and then the call ended. For a moment, he just sat there, staring at the screen. Someone had just threatened him. He barely had time to process it before his door burst open. 3 Secret Service agents rushed in, their hands on their earpieces. "Sir, what happened?" Barron looked up, his heartbeat still racing. "I just got a call. Someone told me to drop the lawsuit." The lead agent exchanged glances with his colleagues, then pressed his earpiece. "We need an immediate security lockdown on the First Son's communication lines. Get a trace on that call now." Within minutes, the entire White House was on high alert. Security teams combed through digital logs, trying to trace the call. Barron's father was briefed immediately. Inside the Oval Office, Donald Trump's expression darkened as he listened. "They think they can scare my son?" he muttered, gripping the edge of his desk. Melania rushed in moments later, her face pale with worry. "Barron, are you all right?" He nodded, but there was something different in his eyes now. He wasn't just angry. He was ready to fight back. They don't just want to ruin us," he said, voice steady. "They want us to be afraid." Melania met his gaze, her own resolve hardening. She touched his face gently, her fingers cool against his skin. "Then we show them we are not afraid." Despite the threat against Barron, the public had no idea what was happening behind the White House doors. The news cycle raged on, and Whitmore was still pushing his narrative. The next morning, a bombshell dropped. A major news outlet ran an exclusive story. Melania Trump's past. Secrets no one knew until now. The article was filled with baseless speculation, digging up old rumors, twisting small, insignificant details from her past into something scandalous. Talk show hosts pounced on the story, using it to question her integrity. Barron was livid. That evening, he sat with his legal team, going over the new attacks. "We knew this was coming," one of the attorneys said grimly. "They're trying to distract from the real issue." Donald Trump leaned forward. "They can attack me all they want. They've been doing it for years. But this is about Melania." His gaze flickered to Barron. "And they're doing it because they know you won't back down." Barron's fists tightened. "Then we don't give them the satisfaction. We keep pushing forward." But as his security team monitored his communications and searched for the source of the threat, something unexpected happened. A second email. This time it was even more dangerous than the first. From unknown sender. Subject: "You should have listened." Inside there was a single attachment. Barron clicked it, his eyes scanning the contents, and his stomach dropped. It was a video, a heavily edited, manipulated clip. It showed Melania Trump seemingly mocking an underprivileged family at a private event. But Barron knew it was fake. The video was a deep fake, designed to destroy her reputation even further. His phone buzzed again. His legal team was already on it. "We have experts reviewing it," one lawyer said over the line. "It's been tampered with, but the problem is it looks real enough that most people won't question it." Barron's blood boiled. "They want to turn my mother into a villain." Melanie, standing beside him, watched the video in silence. Then she exhaled softly. "They want us to break," she said. Barron stood up, fire in his eyes. "Then they'll be disappointed." The next morning, Barron stepped onto the White House lawn. A podium had been set up. Cameras flashed. Millions watched live. He took a deep breath, gripping the edges of the podium, his voice steady, his resolve unshaken. "Enough is enough," he said. "This isn't about politics. This isn't about opinions. This is about human decency. My mother is a good woman, and I won't stand by while people try to destroy her with lies." The media room was silent. Barron's voice didn't waver. "My father fights for what he believes in. My mother stays silent, but she feels everything. And me?" He stared into the cameras, into the homes of every American watching. "I will not be silent." The moment shook the world. The smear campaign had failed, and Whitmore knew it. But the battle was far from over. The morning of the trial arrived like a storm rolling in over Washington, D.C. The air outside the courthouse was thick with tension as reporters jostled for position, cameras flashed like lightning, and protesters lined the streets. Some supporting Barron Trump's stand for justice, others backing Jason Whitmore, still clinging to the belief that this was a First Amendment battle rather than an attack on character. Barron stepped out of the armored SUV, flanked by Secret Service agents, his mother at his side. Melania looked as poised as ever, her expression unreadable behind dark sunglasses, but Barron could feel the weight on her shoulders. This was about her dignity, her name, her years of silent suffering under the relentless attacks of the media. And he would make sure she walked out of this courtroom vindicated. Across the plaza, Whitmore emerged from his black town car, his signature smug smirk plastered across his face. He loved the cameras, loved the controversy. He still didn't believe he could lose. But today, the rules were about to change. Barron tightened his fists, squared his shoulders, and walked into the courthouse, ready to face the fight of his life. The courtroom buzzed with energy, filled with journalists, legal analysts, and members of the public who had managed to secure seats for what was being called the defamation trial of the decade. The judge, a seasoned, no-nonsense woman named Justice Meredith Langford, called the court to order. Barron sat at the plaintiff's table, his father just behind him, his mother beside him, and his legal team meticulously reviewing the mountain of evidence they had compiled. On the other side, Whitmore lounged in his chair, whispering to his lawyers, his confidence unwavering. Then, it began. Barron's lead attorney, David Calloway, stepped forward. A former federal prosecutor, his presence commanded respect. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," he began, his voice steady, calculated. "This case is not about politics. It is not about free speech. It is about something far more important, the truth." He paced slowly, letting the weight of his words settle. Jason Whitmore used his platform to spread malicious, calculated lies about Melania Trump, not as a political critique, but as a personal attack designed to humiliate her on a national stage. And today, we will prove that, beyond a shadow of a doubt. Whitmore's lead attorney, Victor Landon, a high-powered media lawyer, stood next. "This lawsuit is a dangerous precedent," he declared, looking at the jury with carefully measured concern. "The First Amendment exists to protect journalists, to allow them to speak freely. If we silence opinion, we silence democracy." Barron's fists clenched. This wasn't opinion, it was character assassination. And he had the proof to show it. Day one of testimony focused on laying the foundation of the case. The leaked emails exposing Whitmore's deliberate attempt to smear Melania were entered into evidence. The jury's reaction was immediate. Some frowned, some took careful notes, and even Whitmore's legal team shifted uncomfortably. Day two was a bombshell. The deepfake video attempting to make Melania look cruel, a digital fabrication, was exposed for what it was. Digital forensic analysts testified that the footage had been manipulated. Side-by-side comparisons were shown to the jury, and the truth became undeniable. It was a setup, a lie, a deliberate, orchestrated attack. For the first time, Whitmore's smirk vanished. Day three, and it was Barron's turn to testify. He took a deep breath as he walked to the witness stand, his heart pounding but his resolve unshaken. The courtroom fell silent as he sat down. David Calloway stood before him. "Barron, can you tell the court why you filed this lawsuit?" Barron met the lawyer's gaze, then turned to the jury. "My mother," he said, his voice steady, "has been attacked for years, lied about, mocked, ridiculed, and she never fought back. She just took it. I couldn't let that continue. No son would." Some of the jurors nodded subtly, their faces softening. Calloway nodded. "And how did you feel when you saw Whitmore's remarks about your mother?" Barron's jaw tightened. "I felt anger, frustration, pain, but more than anything I felt that it had gone too far. I knew I had to do something." Calloway turned. No further questions. Then it was Whitmore's lawyer's turn. Landon approached, his eyes narrowed. "You claim this lawsuit is about defending your mother. But isn't this really about power? About using your family's influence to silence critics?" Barron's pulse pounded in his ears. "This isn't about politics," he said firmly. "This is about my mother. This is about right and wrong." Landon smirked. "And yet, you're asking for $100 million. That's quite a price for right and wrong, don't you think?" Barron held his ground. Money won't fix what was done to her, but it will make sure no one else thinks they can do this again. The courtroom was electric. Even Justice Langford seemed impressed by Barron's composure. Whitmore, however, was seething. On day 4, Whitmore was forced to testify. His usual arrogance was gone, replaced with visible frustration. Calloway's cross-examination was ruthless. "You sent an email saying, quote, 'Let's hit Melania hard, make her look cold and distant. The public eats that up.' Was that an opinion, Mr. Whitmore, or was that a calculated attack?" Whitmore hesitated. I was just making a joke." "A joke?" Calloway's voice was ice cold. "So smearing someone's reputation on live television is just a joke to you?" Whitmore shifted in his seat, glancing at his legal team for help. Calloway stepped forward. "Let me ask you, Mr. Whitmore, do you regret saying what you said?" A long, heavy silence filled the room. Finally, Whitmore exhaled sharply. "Yes." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. The admission hit like a shockwave. The media had turned against him. The jury had seen the truth. And Barron Trump had won the moral war. As the jury left to deliberate, reporters scrambled outside the courthouse, waiting for the final decision. Whitmore's career was hanging by a thread. Melania sat beside Barron, squeezing his hand. No matter what the jury decided, they had already won. But the battle was far from over. The jury's deliberation stretched on for hours, each passing minute amplifying the tension that gripped the courtroom. Barron Trump sat motionless, his fingers laced together on the polished oak table, his jaw clenched as he stared straight ahead. His mother, Melania Trump, remained composed beside him, though her delicate fingers occasionally tightened around his wrist, as if to reassure him, or perhaps herself. Across the room, Jason Whitmore sat slumped in his chair, his face betraying the first flickers of doubt that he had kept hidden throughout the trial. The once arrogant media titan now fidgeted with his tie, his jaw tight, his mind undoubtedly racing through his failed defense. The smirk he had worn at the start of this legal battle was long gone. The gallery behind them was filled with media analysts, journalists, and political figures who had come to witness one of the most controversial defamation cases in modern history. The world was watching. Every news network, every streaming platform, every social media page was buzzing with speculation. Then, at exactly 4:12 p.m., the courtroom doors creaked open. The jury filed in silently, their faces unreadable. A stillness fell over the room, thick and suffocating. Justice Meredith Langford took her seat at the bench, her gavel resting lightly beneath her palm. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" she asked, her voice steady. The jury foreman, a middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair and an air of solemnity, stood and cleared his throat. "We have, Your Honor." Barron's heartbeat pounded in his ears. This was it. The foreman unfolded a crisp sheet of paper, his hands steady. "In the case of Trump v. Whitmore, on the charge of defamation, we, the jury, find the defendant..." A pause. The world held its breath. "Guilty." A gasp rippled through the courtroom. Melania exhaled sharply, her grip on Barron's wrist tightening. Barron himself sat frozen for a fraction of a second, his breath caught in his throat, before he felt a surge of relief wash over him. But the foreman wasn't finished. He continued reading, his voice unwavering. "In terms of damages, we find that the defendant's words and actions have caused severe reputational harm and emotional distress. We therefore award the plaintiff $100 million in punitive damages." The moment the number was spoken, a wave of reactions exploded through the courtroom. Gasps, whispers, muffled cries of disbelief. Whitmore's face drained of color. He looked as if he had been struck by lightning. His lawyer immediately stood. "Your Honor, we intend to appeal this decision." Justice Langford slammed her gavel down sharply. "You may file the necessary motions, but for now the jury's decision stands." A tide of emotions swelled within Barron. It wasn't about the money, it never had been. It was about justice, respect, truth. He turned to his mother. Tears glistened in her eyes, but she held her composure. She wasn't just relieved, she was free. Finally free from the years of slander, the ridicule, the whispers that had followed her everywhere. Across the room, Whitmore's shoulders sagged. His career was over. His name was now synonymous with disgrace. For the first time since the trial had begun, he refused to meet Barron's gaze. As the courtroom doors swung open, the hallway erupted into chaos. Reporters surged forward, microphones thrust in every direction, cameras flashing in rapid succession. "Mr. Trump, how do you feel about the verdict? Do you think this will silence the media? Is this just the beginning of lawsuits against biased journalism?" Barron didn't answer immediately. He stood on the courthouse steps, breathing in the crisp afternoon air. The weight of everything, the trial, the attacks, the threats against him, finally hit him all at once. Then he turned to the cameras. "This case was never about money," he said, his voice clear, unwavering. "It was about accountability. My mother was unfairly attacked, and today, the truth won." He let his words sink in. The reporters hung on every syllable. "I respect free speech, but free speech is not a free pass to destroy someone's life with lies." At that, a cheer rose from the crowd of supporters that had gathered outside. People waved American flags, holding up signs reading, "Truth wins," and "Justice for Melania." Barron's words carried through the cameras across networks into the homes of millions watching. Some were furious, others were inspired. But no one could ignore the undeniable fact: he had won. As Barron and Melania were escorted away, Whitmore sat in his high-rise New York apartment, staring at the news coverage in stunned silence. His phone had stopped ringing. His sponsors had withdrawn their support. His show was officially canceled. And then his personal assistant walked in, face pale. "Mr. Whitmore, they just pulled your contract. The network is terminating your position, effective immediately." Whitmore buried his face in his hands. He had spent years weaponizing the media, twisting narratives to fit his agenda. And now he was the one being erased. That evening, Barron sat in the quiet of the White House, looking out over the city skyline. The weight of victory felt different than he expected. Melania sat beside him, a hand on his knee. "You did something important today," she said softly. Barron nodded. But something still felt unfinished. And then, his decision hit him like lightning. The next morning, he called a press conference. The room was packed, the world expecting him to deliver a final blow to Whitmore's career. Instead, he stunned them. "I've made a decision regarding the damages awarded in this case," Barron said. "I will not be keeping a single cent." A murmur of shock rippled through the room. "Instead," he continued, "every dollar will be donated to organizations that protect individuals, especially women, from online harassment, character defamation, and public attacks." The room erupted into gasps and applause. Even some of the reporters who had doubted him nodded in approval. And across the country, millions who had mocked him before fell silent. Because in that moment, Barron Trump proved that this was never about revenge. It was about setting a precedent. It was about showing that words have consequences. And most of all, it was about justice. The courtroom victory had sent shockwaves through the media world, but Barron Trump knew the battle wasn't truly over. The ruling was final, the damages awarded, and the truth exposed, but something still lingered in the air. A sense of unfinished business. Even as Whitmore's empire crumbled and his name was etched into history as a disgraced media figure, a storm was brewing. The smear campaigns against Melania Trump had stopped overnight, and mainstream networks now cautiously avoided attacking the Trump family. But Barron couldn't shake the feeling that something else was coming, something bigger. Then, just as he was beginning to catch his breath, it happened. It was nearly midnight when Barron's phone buzzed on his nightstand. He had been struggling to sleep, his mind still racing from the trial, the media fallout, and the overwhelming weight of his decision to donate the $100 million settlement. The screen displayed an unknown number. He hesitated. Then, against his better judgment, he answered. A deep, distorted voice filled the silence. "You should have walked away." Barron sat up, his pulse spiking. "Who is this?" A cold chuckle echoed through the receiver. "Your little press stunt humiliated some very powerful people. People who don't forget." Barron's grip tightened around the phone. "Is that a threat?" The voice was eerily calm. "Not a threat, a warning. You've won the battle, but the war? It's far from over. Walk away now, or we make sure you regret it." The call cut out. For a moment he sat frozen in the darkness. His breathing was shallow, his mind racing. The enemy wasn't just Whitmore. It was something bigger, something lurking behind the scenes. The ones who had enabled the attacks on his mother, the ones who had allowed the media to twist reality without consequence. And now, they were coming for him. The next morning, Barron stormed into the Oval Office, his heart still pounding from the call. Donald Trump stood behind his desk, reviewing documents. But as soon as he saw the fire in his son's eyes, he set them aside. "I got a call last night," Barron said without hesitation. Someone powerful wants me to stop." His father's expression didn't change. If he was surprised, he didn't show it. "I expected this," Donald said simply. "You embarrassed them, you cost them control, and you proved that a Trump doesn't back down." Barron clenched his fists. "I won't be intimidated." His father leaned back, studying him carefully. Then, for the first time since the trial ended, his voice softened. "Barron," he said, a rare hint of concern in his tone. "You've done more than anyone expected. You've taken on the media, exposed corruption, and stood up for your mother when no one else did. But understand this, these people don't play fair. They don't fight in the open. They hit where it hurts, and they won't stop until they get what they want." Barron exhaled sharply. "So what do I do?" Donald Trump's jaw tightened. Then, he gave him the advice that defined the next chapter of Barron's fight. "You don't back down. You double down. You expose them before they can touch you." Barron nodded slowly. He understood. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Later that evening, Barron sat in the White House library, scrolling through articles about the trial, the threats, and the fallout. The world was still buzzing. His name was everywhere. Then, his phone rang again. But this time, he recognized the number. "Mr. Eastwood," he greeted. Clint Eastwood's voice was as steady as ever. "Kid, you've made history." Barron sighed. "It doesn't feel like it. It feels like I just painted a giant target on my back." A small chuckle. "That's how you know you did something right." Barron rubbed his temple. I don't know what comes next. They won't stop. They won't let this go." There was a long pause. Then Clint spoke words that would stay with Barron forever. "You don't have to win every battle, Barron. You just have to win the war." Barron swallowed hard. And at that moment he realized the war had just begun. The threats had been made, the battle lines drawn. But Barron Trump wasn't the kind of man to walk away from a fight, especially not when the truth was at stake. The lawsuit had already exposed the corruption and manipulation lurking in the shadows of the media empire. But now it was clear that the forces behind the smear campaigns ran deeper than anyone imagined. They had tried to silence him with intimidation, with lies, with carefully orchestrated attacks, but nothing had worked. So now, it was time to go public. On the morning of the press conference, the White House press room was packed to capacity. Reporters from every major network had gathered, some waiting for Barron to crumble, others secretly hoping to see him emerge victorious. Cameras flashed, the air buzzed with whispers, and outside, the world waited for his next move. Then he stepped up to the podium. His posture was steady, his expression unreadable. But as he gripped the edges of the podium, there was no mistaking the fire in his eyes. For years, the media has used its power to twist, distort, and manipulate the truth. They've attacked my family, they've smeared my mother, and they've done it all under the guise of free speech. But today, we draw the line. The room fell silent. "We have the proof. We have the emails, the documents, the recordings." This wasn't an offhand remark by a talk show host. This was a calculated, deliberate attempt to destroy someone. My mother. Because she dared to stand beside my father. And the moment I stood up for her, they tried to destroy me too. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The journalists in the room shifted uncomfortably. But they made one mistake. Barron's voice was steel. They thought they could scare me. They thought they could make me walk away. They were wrong. A hush fell over the room. Then he delivered his final blow. The lawsuit may be over, but the fight for the truth isn't. So I ask you, if they could do this to me, what do you think they're doing to you? To your families? To the people who don't have the power to fight back? Today, we make sure this never happens again. The press room erupted. Reporters shouted over one another, camera flashes exploded, and outside, the crowd roared. Barron Trump had just taken his fight from the courtroom to the nation, and the world would never be the same. This story is more than just a courtroom battle. It's a fight for truth, respect, and the courage to stand up against media manipulation. Barron Trump's unwavering resolve in the face of attacks shows that integrity and family loyalty matter more than public perception. In today's world, where misinformation spreads rapidly and reputations are destroyed in seconds, this story serves as a reminder. We must hold the media accountable and defend those who are unfairly targeted. If this story resonated with you, if you believe in standing up for what's right, then let your voice be heard. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with others. Together, we can challenge false narratives and make sure the truth always comes to light. Let's keep the conversation going. Leave a comment below and tell us your thoughts.